Test. Oh, good. Test. Test on this one. Test, test, test. Robin, what about this one? Can you get anything off of this one? Test on this one. Testing, testing. Good, good, good. What about now? What about now? Good. I can't. A little high. Good. Perfect.
Look to this day, for it is life, the very life of life. In its brief course lie all the verities and realities of your existence, the bliss of growth, the glory of action, the splendor of beauty. For yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow is only a vision. But today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Look well, therefore, to this day.
All right, the energy's too low for how good a day yesterday was. So let's rise in body or spirit. Let's see if we can get many of these verses. And we're going to start as soon as the lyrics are up on the wall. Would you all join me in a moment of prayer and reflection to open the service? The God that we know when we see hope and justice and love and kindness, whatever that is that brings us through this day and makes life better. Help us to be joyful today. Help us to see the gifts that are coming. Help us to be thankful that summer is over. And help us to know that the world is better because we are here. Amen.
A Seed Knows How to Wait by Hope Yaren. A seed knows how to wait. Most seeds wait for several years before starting to grow. A cherry seed can wait for 100 years before starting to grow, with no problem. What exactly each seed is waiting for is known only to that seed. Some unique trigger combination of temperature, moisture, light, and many other things is required to convince a seed to jump off the deep end and take its chance, to take its one and only chance to grow. A seed is alive while it waits. Every acorn on the ground is just as alive as the 300-year-old oak tree that towers above it. Neither the seed nor the old oak is growing. They are both just waiting. Their waiting differs, however, in that the seed is waiting to flourish while the tree is only waiting to die. When you go into a forest, you probably tend to look up at the plants that have grown so much taller than you ever could. You probably don't look down, where just beneath your single footprint sits between 100 and 1,000 seeds, each one alive and waiting. When you're in the forest, for every tree that you see, there are no less than 3 million more trees waiting in the soil, fervently wishing to be. When the embryo within a seed starts to grow, it basically just stretches out of its doubled over waiting posture, elongating into official ownership of the form that it assumed years ago. The hard coat that surrounds a peach pit, a sesame or mustard seed, or a walnut shell mostly exists to prevent this expansion. In the laboratory, we simply scratch the hard coat and add a little water, and it's enough to make almost any seed grow. I must have cracked thousands of seeds over the years, and yet the next day's green never fails to amaze me. Something so hard can be so easy if you just have a little help. In the right place, under the right conditions, you can finally stretch out into what you are supposed to be. Each beginning is the end of a waiting. We are each given exactly one chance to be. Each of us is both impossible and inevitable. Every replete tree was first a seed that waited.
So welcome to the Unitarian Church of Baton Rouge. My name is Nathan. I'm one of your ministers. Reverend Chris, who's basically held down the fort while I was on sabbatical, is actually taking a Sunday off. So good for him. We are a few things for you to know. Let's go visitors first. If you are a visitor or new to the church or want to know more about the history of this church, after this service in room 6, which is as far away from here as possible, like that way, we will be having a class on introduction to this church's history. Also, if you are not a visitor and you've been here a long time, but you just want to hear about this church's history, room 6 after this. If, however, you want to know about our social justice working group, which is working on voting access, will be meeting in room 7. So you can either go to room 6 or room 7. If you have children or youth, they go to this side. That's after the service. Also, while you are in the fellowship hall, which is over there, there is a beeping. We know about the beeping. We are waiting on some magical technical person to come and press some button that makes it stop beeping. Do not worry, the beeping is fine, and everything will be all will be well with the beeping. The other thing, and actually next week for visitors also, we are going to have a meet and greet with the ministers in room 6. Same room you'll learn about the history of the church. Online people, we are glad that you are with us. Please be as active in the chat, share it, like it, whatever it is you need to do to be excited. And the other thing for you to know, 2 things. One, normally we have slides that introduce all of the elements of the service. Well, the person who usually makes those decided to accidentally got COVID, so we're going to wait until they're back to have those slides back up. So if you're a little more out of sorts with the images, it's fine. I intentionally didn't even ask them to do it because I knew they were going to need to be recovering for a while. Last thing, October 21st, Unitarian Universalists from all over the state are coming here for a sort of revival. And we would like 2 things. One, for all of you to come if you want to as well. We're going to have time to talk about the history of Unitarian Universalism in the state of Louisiana, and then we're going to actually break up into congregation-based groups to talk about what our future could look like. So this is an invitation to all of you, but also if you would like to help with making food, bringing food, organizing food, welcoming people, any of the housing, if you would like to help find a place for some of the folks who want to stay in home hospitality to stay, please come talk to me or our president. Our president is in charge of everything, so Jeff Gauger over here. Online people, I pointed to a very smart person who you can find on the internet somewhere if you would like to volunteer. The only stones that we have today is, first of all, there is a memorial service for Don Patterson on October 7th at 4 o'clock. And if you would place a stone for Kenny Smith, he was not a member of the church, but as part of the Interfaith Federation, we are a part of the Interfaith Federation, and there is a group, there's a soup kitchen called the Holy Grill, and he was a staple over there. So we're going to have a card at the congregational care table, which is over in the kitchen area after this. This ritual we have for his family. This ritual we have is open to everybody, visitor and member alike. We invite those who wish to come forward either along the west or the east wall. Take a stone, let it be what's on your heart, what's on your soul, whatever it is that you need to do. Place it in the chalice bowl. Online people, type your stones right into the chat. We now invite those who wish to come forward as we place stones. And we say together, with hope to make this a better world, we light this flame. Its light is a symbol of the power of love.
From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung, through every land, by every tongue.
Blaze by Reverend Erica Hewitt. One of my stories is about getting lost in the woods during my first October in Maine. That's where I went running, naively or foolishly, depending on how charitable you want to be, around twilight. Dark fell fast. I'd been following blue blazes painted onto trees, but I took a wrong turn and spent a long time questioning my life choices. Once I was home, it occurred to me that fear, not the cold or the steep trail zigzagging into darkness, had presented the greatest danger. Just a few months later, a painful betrayal threw me into a different kind of wilderness. I found myself with neither a place to live nor a job to secure one. For months, I tossed between despair and survival, too ashamed to ask for much help. It was a gentle ministerial colleague who offered me a lifeline. "Tell me the story," she prompted during one of our conversations, "about the night you got lost in the woods." So I explained. As I wandered that night, I realized that I didn't have to deduce the mountain's topography or the entire trail. I managed to find a single tree hatched with blue paint and ventured out in loops to find just one more, and then another and another. Blaze by blaze, however haphazardly, I moved toward safety, toward home. "Maybe in this wilderness," my colleague offered, "you don't need to figure out the entire mountain. What if you don't need to know more than the very next sign? And when you need to know more, you will." We talked about where, in all of my lostness, I sensed a single sign forward. I felt hope catch, which allowed me to risk asking for more help from spirits and from other humans. Very slowly, I emerged from a fearsome wilderness into something that felt like safety.
Lee, with music that good, is this mic on? Can y'all hear? I assume I cannot be in the choir unless I am a skilled musician and I know how to, that's not true. So if I just know how to maybe match pitch and I want to test it out, I could come? Trey, is that true? So like every Wednesday if I wanted, I could just show up and you would help me sing. I'm not talking to you all, the choir. Everyone else. If you would like to, Wednesday nights, you can come and you can sing. But you then have to, 6:30, but then you got to come to church on Sunday and sing. Oh, and Trey will, we actually, online people who don't have access to the mic, one of the choir just chimed in and said that Trey, our choral director, will help you learn how to sing. This is like professional singing lessons, but in a group, and all you have to do is be there. All right. So we need to spend a few minutes talking about my azaleas. Can we? Good, okay. As I mentioned last week, I'm trying my hand at gardening. You'll be happy to know that I grew 5 more okra this week. Not the plants, like the okra, which is almost enough for me to not have enough to even have a meal. I am also almost certainly killed my 4 tomato plants, and all of the carrots and broccoli and cauliflower that I have sprouted are still barely sprouted. Anyway, my house did come with 8 azalea plants, 4 on each side underneath the windows. They're not the biggest or strongest azaleas in the world, but they've been around for a while. A few years ago, when one of those really bad freezes came through, I spent a few hours in the misty rain, furiously trying to cover the azaleas to protect them. Across the street, my neighbor, whose azaleas are much more robust than mine, watched me incompetently try to cover my bushes. A little trick, I didn't have any of the things to protect it, so I went to a thrift shop and I said, "Can I have your old, stained gross sheets you're just going to throw away?" And they gave them to me, and I used that to cover the azaleas. Anyway, after a little while, she came over, and she told me she never worries about the azaleas, that they're always fine. She just lets them grow. And they were, and they are. So I've taken that philosophy. See, the whole gardening a swamp thing is a little interesting. I'd always assumed that azaleas need much more care than this climate here requires. After that very polite talking to by my neighbor, I stopped ever trying to protect my azaleas, and they have loved it. They have survived freezes and hurricanes and drought and all the other bizarre weather that this state has ever thrown at us, except for this summer. This summer was the hottest that we have ever experienced. It was the driest, I think, that we have ever experienced. My azaleas are east-facing, which means they get full sun from sunrise until about 1 or 2 in the afternoon. As is my practice, I completely ignored them through much of the drought and the heat. It was only after some of the leaves started turning bright fire red that I thought I might have some trouble. I began going out each morning and evening, watering them with a little drip hose because I know you don't want to flood them or whatever. Some of the bushes are fine, but some, I think, have met their final destination. So for today, as we mark the end of this incredibly hot summer, I thought we as a religious community should examine what our world will look like when my azaleas die. And with no way I scripted it, with no way to transition from that into the offertory, we're going to. And so this is the last Sunday of the month, correct? Yeah. So this is our last chance to share our offering with the Gardeer Initiative, which is an excellent organization. So our social justice team spends meeting after meeting talking about what organizations in Baton Rouge are doing good works that we can be a part of. And one of the things that they've identified is the Gardeer Initiative. So the last 2 months, when we split the offering, we wound up with about $1,000 going to each of the organizations.
But I think that was the 11:30 people. I've heard rumor that the 9 o'clock congregation does not like to give to organizations whose names start with the letter G. I don't know why, it seems very capricious and arbitrary, but that's the rumor that I heard, and I didn't just start it right here. So, if you would like to give very generously, I will never again in the history of the world in September of 2023 say that the 9 o'clock service does not give generously to organizations whose name starts with the letter G. This morning's, God, I hope that works. I'm going to look so foolish. Okay, if all of that didn't work, give so I don't look like I just ruined our last chance at giving to this great organization. Good? All right. I will now ask the ushers to come forward as this morning's offering is gratefully given and received. So we also just did a thing. I believe we asked the president of the Gardeer Initiative to give to the Gardeer Initiative. Could you just wave? Online people, someone is... Are people welcome to talk to you about this after service? Okay, so you all are welcome to not all at once. I'm glad you're here with us today. Oh, and all the things I said, we should have done this in reverse. We should have introduced you then, and then you would have given more instead of all of my shenanigans. All right, so this is the second part of the sermon. I do not have an official title of this, but I am calling it All of the Bad Stuff. So this will be the down part, and then we'll go back up. Also, bear in mind, I know that I am more apocalyptically feeling because of what we've all been through the last 3 years. So it is possible or likely that what we have experienced these last 3 years is influencing the bad stuff section. Does that make sense? Here we go. At some point in mid-June, while I was on sabbatical and we were experiencing temperatures with the feel like of 115 or more degrees, one of my friends posted on Facebook the simple sentence, "I hope you are enjoying the coolest summer for the rest of our lives." Every time I stepped on crunchy, dry grass, every time I heard that eerie wind, please, did anyone else hear the wind this summer and it bothered you? Yes? I asked some people and they hadn't. So anyone else? All right. The wind felt, I don't know how to describe it. It's like the lack of moisture or the excessive heat. The wind felt hollow, like it was carrying something ominous. Every night I would go out and listen to the wind, just a little bit. That was the scariest part of the summer for me. But every time I saw those apologetic weather reports where the meteorologist would apologize for having no good news for us, that one comment about how this is the coolest summer for the rest of our lives kept playing in my head. Now, there is plenty of data out there about what could happen, with a 1.5 or a 2.5 degree increase in global temperatures. I am not here to retrace that data. There are scientists who have been reporting on this for years. But what I am doing is asking for us as a religious people to acknowledge the trauma or fear or helplessness or outright anxiety that this past summer and what they are predicting will come might do or feel for us. So look, I am Louisiana through and through. One of my favorite fake fights to have with my wife is, if we won the lottery, what would we do with it? What I would like to do is to buy a little one-bedroom or an efficiency in the French Quarter so I can go there whenever I want. See, my family is all from the greater New Orleans area, and there's something about being at the epicenter of my family's history that's very appealing to me. My wife says she would use that money to go travel the world, and points out to me that we would then have enough money to rent a hotel room wherever we wanted in the city that's literally an hour away from us. I think she's right. But I'm too Louisiana to have a desire to visit the world. Do you know what? Any other Louisianians have that? Yeah, okay, thank you. I'm not alone. But it doesn't change my desire, however, to want to have a connection to whatever my brain has decided is the epicenter of my ancestry. And if I grew up in a previous generation and I happened on a windfall, I might consider an investment property there. Maybe a little bed and breakfast or something where I can have a little back room where I could stay on weekends. Maybe make a little money. But I have let that dream die. Both for logistical financial reasons, because I don't play the lottery, so it's not likely I'm going to win in the circumstance. But also because I don't have faith that, based on what I've read, that the city will be here long enough for me to get a return on that investment. Even though it is a pipe dream, one flush with privilege, the state of our climate is robbing me of that dream. And I would imagine a lot of us are having our dreams robbed. I had always assumed that climate change would mean more intense hurricanes, which it probably does. But I didn't expect the subtler things like that wind that I heard. I didn't expect to have to take care of my azaleas in a place where azaleas can grow without touching. In fact, my parents have big old azalea bushes. There's a magnolia tree growing in the middle of their azalea bush. I asked my dad about it. He said he's not worried one of them will win. But the idea for today's service is for us to have space, for us to have a container to be able to place our worry, anxiety, angst, and to let that container be labeled with theological language, an appropriate spiritual place for our concerns to go. And don't worry, like I said, this is the low part of the service. It's all kind of up from here. That awful summer we had about 7 years ago when a bunch of you flooded and Baton Rouge demanded justice and then lost its focus. We marked the end of that summer by singing a hymn. So my first tool to offer you when things are difficult is this. So the hymn we are not about to sing is one that is so out of touch with our experience here in Louisiana that I shared it with you then. So the hymn was written by someone, I think in New England. I think it's a white Unitarian who wrote it. But there has always been a disconnect between how many of my colleagues and most of our people of faith who live up in the north see the world and the experience that we have down here. But to close out that miserable summer, we sang that hymn out of an irony and an anger and a cynicism because of how out of sync that hymn was with what we had experienced. There's one line where it actually says, "In the cool of summer evening," where the dancing insects play. I don't want to let that just sit here and just move on with the rest of my sermon. Cool of summer evening. You name me one insect that dances out there that you want to sing about. Anyway, You know, the first time I brought my wife to my sister's graduation in high school, it was at a football field in Slidell, and that was when the termites were swarming. Anyway, but we sang that song, that hymn, to mark the end of the summer because it was a good vessel for our anger and hopelessness, and it gave us a straw man enemy to push against. One that didn't really matter if we were upset with it or not. But cynicism is an acute coping mechanism. We need something more robust for what we are dealing with. So Lee, our music director, gave us an example of that. They rewrote the lyrics to this hymn to make it more in sync with what living here and having the end of summer feels like. Because even though it feels like of 95 degrees today, I looked it up, like not total today, like right now, outside it feels like 95. But because even with that, yesterday marks the end of the summer that killed my azaleas, let us sing this next hymn to recognize that we are going into a period of respite and comfort and cool, even though it may take a while for us to get there. So let's rise and body our spirit as we sing this next hymn.
When the summer sun is rising and the cool of day comes down and the jasmine in the gardens adds its perfume all around, sun sets slowly o'er the oak trees, colors set the sky alight. I am part of all creation, summer, sun, and dark of night. When the warm and silky darkness covers all the land with night, moths fly low around the candles and the fireflies glow with light. Sun sets slowly over oak trees, colors set the sky alight. I am part of all creation, summer, sun, and dark of night. In the cool of summer evenings, owls call softly in their flight, and sweet olive blends with cricket, symphony of summer night. Sunset slowly over oak trees, colors set the sky alight. I am part of all creation, summer and sun of dark of night.
That was pretty, right? Good job, Lee. So it's time for the theological reflection part of the service. And today is one where I find Unitarian Universalism, theologically, may struggle more than most other faiths with this crisis. For the longest time, we have had this idea of onward and upward, the idea that we are going to make the world better through our actions. If something is wrong, we are the ones who can fix it. God is how we personify mystery, or that which is greater than us, that which holds us together. It's how we personify reality beyond the tangible world. In our particular theological articulation, we manifest God by how we do our work. And the harder we work, the more we manifest God. Does that make sense? This ties back to our puritanical congregational roots. Y'all know we were Puritans like way back in the day, right? You don't have to leave, but like... The Congregationalist churches where Unitarian Universalism got its start were originally founded as puritanical churches, and they moved and changed and whatever. But that weird puritanical let's all work and not celebrate ethic, that's kind of embedded into our faith, for good and for bad. But the idea is that if something is wrong, we Unitarian Universalists gather together to advocate and educate and protest. And by uniting, we build a better world, and that is how we manifest God, or at least our concept of God. Does that make sense? Okay, good. Because it is a two-dimensional representation of something three-dimensional, every God concept that we can create has a flaw and a shadow side. If we are the ones to make justice happen, if we are the ones who manifest God in that way in this world, if we are the ones who are building heaven on earth, that's a lot of pressure on us. And if something happens that is larger than our own individual or even our collective abilities, if there is something that we are in charge of making better, but it isn't better, and that is how we have decided to manifest God, then God will have eventually failed us. Does that make sense? I'm kind of, if you need the sun to never set for God to exist, God will not exist every night. Does that make sense? Good? Okay. So I'm looking for a different God concept that can help us cope with what is going on. So how many of you know the Serenity Prayer? Folks in recovery say it a lot. So I'm actually stealing this from Reverend Michael Dowd's work. He came here in March, and you can watch all this on the internets. But he used that phrase. So I went and looked up where it came from. It came from Reinhold Niebuhr, who is a theologian, and it's maybe from him. There's like 30 different origin sources of the thing. But the phrase was said, and you can use this not just for addiction recovery. I'm going to apply it to coping with our climate, but you could also apply it to your own mortality and the fact that all of us are going to get many of us are going to get a diagnosis that we do not have control over. The Serenity Prayer is, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. But it continues. There is some language we will unpack in a minute, but I'm also going to expand God from he into just using the term God because I think it's more than one gender. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as the pathway to peace, taking, as God did, the sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that God will make all things right if I surrender to God's will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with God forever in the next. Amen. That's the full prayer. One of the interpretations of God that works for me is that pull towards love and justice, that pull towards a more compassionate world no matter the circumstances. Because the more people that I care about and love, the more times I'm going to be heartbroken. The only solution to grief is to never interact with another human being again. But yet we still keep being pulled to interact with people and to love people. So I see whatever that pull is a way that I articulate God. So using that, if we read that last part, which is hard for my poor little Unitarian ears to hear sometimes, taking as God did this sinful world, and I would translate that a little bit. Sin means disconnection. It means being disconnected, and I see disconnect everywhere. We are out of relationship. Our neighbors need our love. We might soon elect a governor who has pushed hard to prevent trans kids from having access to books and medicine. We are in a world where corporations who are most responsible for these effects of climate change have completely sidestepped their responsibility. This is documented, they've been doing this for about 30 or 40 years. And instead, they've asked individuals to shoulder the burden as if we haven't planted enough trees or recycled enough plastic or driven our cars not the right amount of time. When the majority of pollution and the majority of greenhouse gases comes from major corporations and their decisions. All of this is to say we are living in a world that needs healing, that needs reconnection. If sin is disconnect, it needs reconnection. So it continues. Taking as God did this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, Trusting that God, or trusting that pull towards love, or whatever that thing is that helps get you out of bed in the morning. Taking, as God did, this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that God will make all things right if I surrender to God's will. That's my next struggle. I don't like the idea of surrendering. And I'm not thinking of an overtly angry, punishing God telling me what to do. It's turning myself over to the world as it could or it should be, getting myself out of the way and trusting that love is more important than what I need. Surrendering those things to keep me from, whatever those things are that keep me from fully loving my neighbors and my family and myself. It concludes that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with God forever in that. I don't know that happiness is our goal, but that's a sermon for a different day. I found this prayer helpful during the summer we just had that killed my azaleas, and in coping with the reality that this might be the coolest summer for the rest of our lives. It is important that we remember we do not have to, nor can we fix everything, and that God is not proven or disproven by how hard we work. I'm sorry, Puritans. I just don't think that's true. We have to do some deep work as religious people to figure out which things we can change and which things we cannot. And we can pray that we have the wisdom to know the difference. Our religious task is, on the one hand, to continue to advocate for the world as it should and could be, to continue to demand a world where everyone has access to justice in their own humanity and to be able to breathe clean air that doesn't give them cancer just by virtue of them living by a plant. A world where people are safe and know that they are loved just as they are. And on the other hand, to trust in something larger that even if it isn't okay, all will be well. I've invited 2 leaders from our climate support group. Maida and I spent months talking about what this group could or should be. So the 2 people we're going to hear, second from Maida Owens, who's been a member of this church for a long time, and first from Denise Crow, who joined the church after she came to the Michael Dowd event and really felt some synchronicity with this. But we were talking about what this group could be, and Maida and I talked, and this is not necessarily a go out and protest at a chemical plant group. If it moves you to do that, that's fine. But we need a group who's going to help us cope with what we are experiencing and what we experienced this summer. We need you to have a space to cope with what might be coming up for you or might be coming in this next year or year after that or year after that. So first, Denise, would you come and share a little?
I'm a relatively new member here, as you heard, and I'd like to share my climate change journey with you. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, in a place where they have like 5 garbage cans to properly recycle all of their trash. I mean, they're serious. I also lived in Boston, Massachusetts, that considers itself one of the most sustainable cities in the United States. And I always felt like I was environmentally aware. But when life brought me to Baton Rouge for the past 20 years, I put all that aside and I raised a family. Attending the talk by Michael Dowd last March slapped me in the face. Before that talk, I understood intellectually that there was human-caused climate change. But Dowd's talk shook me to the core. Climate change is happening, and it's likely to happen fast. Once I absorbed this and knew I needed to get active, I also took to heart Dowd's other message. The only way we're going to get through this is together, by supporting each other. By supporting each other. That is the strength of the message here at the Unitarian Church. Our church is filled with intelligent, thoughtful individuals who are willing to share what they know and feel. I am here because of all of you and because of people who helped me through my climate change journey, like Jim Vanderweel, Joyce Young, Maida Owens, and my good friend Janet Mulder, who got me to that Dowd talk to begin with. Together, we've had this climate interest group meetings over the past few months, and we've been working through some challenging topics related to the environment. Our strength has been our willingness to share our questions and our anxieties. There is something about saying our fears out loud that is healing. After the Michael Dowd talk, I did a lot of research, and I heard this amazing poem that I think sums up my climate change journey, and I'd like to share it with you. It's an excerpt from The Hieroglyphic Stairway by Drew Dillinger. It's 3:23 in the morning, and I'm awake because my great-great-grandchildren won't let me sleep. My great-great-grandchildren ask me in dreams, what did you do while the planet was plundered? What did you do when the earth was unraveling? Surely you did something when the seasons started failing, as the mammals, reptiles, birds were all dying. Did you fill the streets with protest? What did you do once you knew?
Right where you're seated, let's do this next hymn.
Send down your waters, send down your waters upon this land. O healing river, send down your waters and wash the blood from off the sand. This land is parching. This land is burning, no seed is growing in the barren ground. O healing river, send down your waters. O healing river, send waters down. Let seeds of freedom awake and flourish. Let deep roots nourish. Let tall stalks rise. O healing river, send down your waters. O healing river, from out the skies.
Unlike Denise, I've been aware of the impact of climate change for a while, and Michael Dowd's message. His use of the Serenity Prayer also helped me accept what I consider inevitable: to get to a place of peace and to find the courage to help where I can. Rather than focusing on mitigation, which is stopping climate change, I accept that we have reached too many tipping points, and so I'm focused on adapting to our predicament. While we may or may not be able to change what is predicted, my crystal ball is broken, we definitely can work to reduce suffering in the meantime. So my focus is on helping people cope and adapt, both within themselves and in the world. At the Division of the Arts Folk Life program, my job, and through the Bayou Culture Collaborative, I work to include what's called the human dimension in environmental planning, with special emphasis on our cultures. I've been doing workshops about this for several years, but I still was not prepared for the heat increase starting this year. And I certainly didn't think Canadian wildfire smoke would reach Baton Rouge. My poor Japanese magnolias are so confused. They have bloomed 5 times since last November. They normally only bloom in January. And this year they didn't bloom at all in January. Most recently, they bloomed with dead leaves. And yes, I also have some azaleas that look dead. But I heard that we should wait to find out if they make it. What a great metaphor for what we're dealing with. I realized that the church wasn't talking about all this. And as Nathan said, I expressed my concerns to him at least a year ago. And he asked whether I thought bringing in Michael Dowd would be a good way to start this conversation. I was concerned about some people not being ready to hear this message, but I'm glad he came and that so many responded. We had about 25 people after his visit here attend his Zoom sessions. And as Denise said, we started the church's climate interest group to continue the conversation. I'm so thankful for Denise jumping in and helping to guide us. She suggested the Together Baton Rouge house meeting format, which provides a way for everyone to reflect and share at each session. The group is a place for everyone, no matter where you are in the process of dealing with all these issues. You can find support, relieve anxiety, and learn as we move forward with taking action on both a personal level and as a group, and hopefully reduce suffering. So I hope all of you will join us, and if you're not already on our list, please sign up. And I happen to be doing a workshop this Thursday on Zoom that's free. And if you would like to attend that, I have information in the kitchen area on one of the tables. Thank you.
So one of the things Maida didn't say is as coastal erosion happens and people who live there are losing their land, part of her job, or a vocation, I don't know which one, is to make sure that their cultures can be preserved wherever they land. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I've been thinking a lot about what that means as sea levels rise. I don't know if you saw this in last week's paper. Thank you to whoever had it sitting out there. I think I took it from it, so it should go back there. But there is an article in there about what Louisiana might look like or could look like in 2070. Of course, none of us knows for certain what will happen. But here's what I think we need to do as a religious people. We know that climate change is going to affect those on the margin more than those with privilege. We know that those with resources are going to be safer than those without. And we know that church is a form of resource. So we are going to have more resources if we are in a church. We know that more people on our coast are going to lose their homes, and we know that more people are going to be moving from the coasts up bayou towards Baton Rouge. While we don't know what could happen to the city, we're relatively sure that it is going to be a city that more and more people will move to. Our charge today is this. We have to build a church so competent and so welcoming that when things get tough or when things get dangerous or when people evacuate here, that this church is open to all who need it. Think about how we responded to Katrina or after the floods in 2016 and 2021. Picture us opening up a cooling station for people in the heat of the summer, or being a part of Together Baton Rouge's community lighthouse project, where we have solar panels on our building so that if there is a power outage, which our blessed energy company has never had happen in this state, ever, but if there is one, people can come here and get ice and charge their cell phones while they wait for the power to be restored. Picture us as a church that has done the work to figure out how to be radically welcoming to everyone who needs this theological message that love is at the center. When trans rights and women's rights are further restricted, which I think is one of the dysfunctional ways that our elected leaders are responding to the trauma of now, by the way, we need to be here and be strong. We need to be able to articulate that justice belongs to everyone, that there is nothing you can do that puts you outside of God's love, and that the love of humanity, and that your own humanness is a gift and a blessing from the most divine. We have a little bit of control over what we do with climate, and we do have a little bit of control over the things that we can do with climate, and we can do the things we need to do individually, and we can continue to advocate for a better world. But because so much of this is outside of our hands, what we can do is spend our time building the strongest and best church we know, not just in the building, but for each of you out in the world, to go be a beacon or a lighthouse for people who need to know that they are loved, who need to know that they are worthy, and that there is a better way than the regressive foolishness that has been going on in this state for too long. The work we do here today will pay dividends for a long time. It is okay for us to grieve and to be worried, but it is also okay for us to be hopeful and joyful. All of these can exist at the same time. We don't need to traverse the whole mountain. We just need to find the next blue mark or blaze in the tree. Not everything is in our control, and it is okay to have faith. Seeds know how to grow. I don't know how they do it, but they do. Not for me, but for others. We know what we must do no matter what comes our way. So let's do it. Amen. Let's sing. I invite you to rise, body or spirit.
Here in reverence now we gather for the blessings we have known, with a pledge to one another that we journey not alone. Joy and sorrow make us wise, kin to all that lives and dies. Love calls us on. Love calls us on. Words and deeds of those before us waken here to keep us strong. Blend our voices in the chorus of creation's living song. Courage is their earthly prize. By their work we realize hope calls us on. Hope calls us on. Loyal guides in love and duty, lead us with a trusted light. Blessed are those whose inward beauty shows the path of truth and right. Honor is their earthly prize. By their work we realize faith calls us on. Faith calls us on. will be. Bright the path before us lies. Joyful pilgrims now we rise. Life calls us on. Life calls us on.
The path is often hard. The way is never clear, and the stakes are very high. But take courage, friends, because there's another truth. You are not alone. It's going to get cooler. It's going to feel better. Summer's over. Go in peace. Go in love. Amen.